This is September 1st, 2016, another Edible Acres 2, and you're going to have to pardon me, we're right next to a busy road. That's this fun road right here, so it's going to get loud periodically as cars come by. I just wanted to show another transformation from a lawn or a mowed kind of nondescript area into food production and beauty. This area, this represents probably a 32nd of an acre. In other words, a minuscule front yard. And this is, we're marking the pretty much 1 year anniversary of this being forsythia and grass. And luckily I took a bunch of photos in the transformation that my partner and I did in this, and I am going to pop that in at the end and do a little talk over about how we did it. But basically, if you can imagine, this time last year, a few weeks later than that, this all was mucky mowed grass, and this was a huge feral forsythia hedge. And this is 1 year later, what it can look like where you live as well. And the strategy was basically a huge chop and drop. All of the forsythia was cut down and laid down onto the stumps of itself in this huge boomerang-shaped garden here. And again, you'll see photos step by step on this at the end of the video, so stick around for that. They were all laid down while they were green, and then we had the, fortunately, unfortunately, whatever you want to say, this road was redone last year, and we talked to the road crew, and while this was still lawn, all through the summer they just dumped truckload after truckload of wood chips. Now wherever you live, someone's going to give you wood chips either for free or for $10 to $15 a cubic yard delivered on average. That's what I found, and it's very worth it. This is about 20 cubic yards of wood chips that were dumped in a mountain over here. And we covered all the forsythia windrow with wood chips, and then covered that with soil and some compost and seeded it out. And it didn't work out all that well. Who'd have figured? Super turbulent raw compost. But 1 year later, and we're still not seeing the nutrients fully unlocked. When I dig in there, there's a lot of undigested wood chips. Tons and tons of nitrogen bind up in here, but enough compost added, enough fertility water, compost tea and all that used to irrigate. And by digging down into the pathways and putting that onto the beds, we've captured more topsoil on top of these, and so the wood chips can just act as like a shredded hugelkultur vibe. You can look up hugelkultur, I've made videos on it, there's other folks that are doing that as well. And so this is one growing season, the first growing season from transitioning from forsythia and muck grass, because this area is very, very wet. I mean challengingly wet. But by building up these beds, we now have, so this area has not been watered more or less once this entire growing season. A little bit during, transplanting little plugs or putting seeds down, but no regular watering. And the beauty is that deep mulch and digging down into the pathways and building the beds up, we now have garden beds that are flood resistant by being built up, but then still have the ability to dip down into that wet soil below and wick up water into the beds. Kind of best of both worlds. Just to give a little heads up as to who's in here, we've got some fun things. Well, first of all, this was an ornamental crab apple that was top worked over to 6 or 7 different varieties of cider apples. So all these are this year's growth, just in case you don't believe me. Let's see if I can get in here without stepping on all of my good stuff. Way in there, here you go. There's Keepsake. That's the growth from this season. It's probably about 3 feet. So huge bank of scion wood to graft other apple trees from this. So that's a fun start, and that allows a lot more light. That's on the southern end, so it's going to allow a lot more light into this garden. We've got tomatillos all through here. There's a bunch of fennels. There's kohlrabi. There's hyssop is planted in. A bunch of utility beans, utility pole beans. Some incredibly hammered cabbage. Interesting thing to observe, the green cabbages across the board Green cabbages slaughtered by slugs. Red cabbages? Huh. Green cabbage slaughtered by slugs. Red cabbage. So we might be having some very red sauerkraut next year and just skip the green cabbage. Kind of fun to see what's going on with that. Sasha put in a bunch of flowers. I don't know them very well. This is Love's Lies Bleeding. And it lied on the driveway, got rolled over once or twice, so it truly is lying bleeding. Zinnia? I don't know. If it's not edible, I really don't know it. It's kind of sad. Nice little patch of rhubarb here. Then we've got some medicinal perennials. There's senna. There's some nice yarrow, cultivar, St. John's wort, really beautiful. Some more senna. It's a great nitrogen fixer. Beautiful browse. There are asparagus dotted all throughout, transplanted in the spring, just getting their wee baby selves into it. And while they're getting started, we've got beets and other seeds for the fall, some root crops seeded out underneath this. More cabbages going. This bed gave us about 40 pounds of onions, and the day the onions came out, we transplanted in bok choy and kohlrabi, the tiny little nuggets in there. In another month, this will be a wall of green. Some hot peppers, some collards on the end. This is a nursery bed. Just for this season, I had a bunch of leftover heart nuts, Carpathian walnuts, American plums, chestnuts, and somebody else, so I just packed them all in there, and squirting out from the edges are a bunch of cabbages and beans. So 1 year of nursery crop. This fall I can lift all these out once they've gone dormant and transplant in other material and put a hoop over it. We've got blueberries getting established in this little U-shaped bed, and while they're getting big, there's no reason not to be growing annuals around them. So we've got broccolis and beets and radishes seeded out, and then a little blueberry getting its game together. In other words, a ton of stuff. And this is 1 year in. And then all along the road, we've stuck curly willow every few feet. Curly willow rooted this spring, and hopefully there's a couple gaps here or there, but hopefully within a year or two, this will just be a solid wall of willow to keep the sense of the road off a bit. And this last bed we are growing hazelnuts, chestnuts, aronia, sea buckthorn, yellow horn, wild American plum, red buds, blue false indigo bush, and Nanking cherry. So that's our shrub and tree layer, the northern end of this bed, to extend indefinitely upward and make a wall of wood between us and the road. So, and then there's tons more little things, broccolis everywhere, carrot seedlings for the fall. A lot of fall seeding in here. We'll see how it takes through all the chippiness. Oh, didn't even notice. This is something we can pick later on, a nice little broccoli starting to form. So, again, I can't say it enough. This is 1 year transformation, almost to the day, a year and a few weeks for this space, from a mowed lawn and haggard forsythia, where the only yield was a time sink with a mower and pruning, no food, just gas, time, hassle, to a perennial, maybe not dominant yet, but a perennial heavy ecosystem, thriving, exploding ecosystem of food and medicine, habitat, soil remediation, soil building, wind protection, beauty, that cost, I don't think there was $1 in this. We got the wood chips for free. If you had to pay for them, that's something. But we basically have a cider orchard starting to happen, food, medicine, beauty, all a few feet from our door for the cost of asking a road crew to drop the wood chips here, and of course a ton of labor. Always labor. Grueling, wonderful, perfect labor. So this is my not going to the gym, This is my not needing to go on a trip or get away from things. This is my exercise, my recreation, my art, my resiliency, all those things folded into one space. So that has value in its labor. 32nd of an acre. This is equivalent to almost everyone's tiny front yard. And this is just year one. So we'll put up a slideshow here at the end explaining the step-by-steps that we took. So stick for that if you want. And get to it. You can really, in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it takes, be converting your space to a ton of food production. That's just the west side of the driveway. This is a whole other video for another time. And you can link to all of the different chicken videos we have. This is the east side of our driveway. This also was a lawn last May. Chickens did a pretty good job of erasing that. And these images should look familiar from other videos, but we'll leave that alone for now. Yep, 0.6 acre in total here. We have 30 chickens generating at least a dozen eggs this time of year, more when they're not broody and molting. So all the eggs we could need to eat, and almost all the food we need throughout the growing season comes from 0.6 acres with a investment below $1,000, and this is all within a few years. So do this for yourself. You owe it to yourself, your family, your children, your friends, the land you're on, to make strides towards self-sufficiency in a healthy place. And you can set a model for your neighbors and your friends of what other things they can do with the land that they pay taxes on or that they rent, other than mowing a lawn. Anyway, there you go. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk soon again. Okay, so here's a kind of an early picture where you see the forsythia and the pile of wood chips I was talking about, and I've already spread some of the wood chips over the lawn. Second picture here, we're starting to cut the forsythia and lay it down where a future garden will be. Here's a little bit more zoomed out. You can see Sasha grabbing some of the cuttings and laying them down on the raised bed, and of course we'll cover that with chips later on. Another picture of that zoomed out a little further along. And now we're starting to sketch where the raised beds will be, and we're using hay and wood chips to do that, just to give a rough sketch. Another view from another angle. You can see here we did a high-tech plant marker where the seeds have gone. And we've got more sketches of the beds. They're starting to really refine now. Another shot of the beds, and you can see the road crew doing their defining of the road while we're defining the beds. There's another shot. And then finally, all the beds are roughly shaped out and ready to go, and then filled with a little more compost and then transplanted into, and that's what you've seen today. Thanks.